Hello and welcome to Morning Bro. It is Monday, May 12th. We watch Morning Bro so you don't have to. Excuse me, it's called Morning Joe. I am DETER McBIZNESS, the offensive progressive, joined as always by Stat Pat, stateless patriot. We are California lefties coming to you with national politics from a leftist perspective. And this morning we're going to be taking a little bit of a turn in terms of what we talk about, and because what the hottest issue of the day is foreign policy. And what the clip we're about to show, Stat Pat, seems to be indicative of trying to be optimistic about foreign policy amidst the chaos that this Trump 2.0 White House has brought upon the domestic front. It seems like international deals can be made. I don't know. We're gonna get some insight here in this clip in a minute. But what's on your mind before we start?
Well, I mean, there's a whole handful of things. There's a lot happening right now. You got, I guess, the Trump administration is signaling that they want to make Palestine a state. Of course, there's this $400 million jumbo luxury jet deal,
Right.
Which is just like, I mean, your mind is gone if you don't think that that's not a bribe and not corruption.
Right.
Not to mention, I guess we're standing down against the Houthis or something like that. There might be a deal coming.
Why don't we get into the Morning Joe clip and that'll guide us?
Yeah, there's a whole lot.
I found this to be the most interesting.
Hey, welcome back to Morning Joe. Caddy, quite a busy weekend for the White House on foreign policy issues. Of course, on Friday, we were talking about the deal between the United States and the UK. A lot of people tried to sort of brush that aside. I actually said on Friday, I thought that was going to be significant, and it was sort of a hat tip to the other countries that the White House was open for business. They were willing to make deals. And then, of course, we saw that with China. But also, we woke up to the news Saturday morning, actually good news, that there had been at least a ceasefire, not peace, but a ceasefire brokered between two nuclear powers, India and Pakistan. President Trump making that announcement on Saturday morning. There's still skirmishes there, but that remains, and has ever since Pakistan went nuclear as well. That remains a hot spot on the global stage that a lot of Americans don't really focus on, and maybe we in the press don't focus on enough.
Yeah, and look, here is the United States back in its familiar role that the rest of the world has always looked to since the Second World War, playing that role of negotiator and mediator in chief, even though we know this is an administration that would like to have more of a pullback for the US in those roles. But it's true, David. I mean, you look at everything that happened over the course of the weekend. You had the China-US talks over tariffs. You had the India talks. You had the UK deal. You had the news coming out of the Middle East that the last remaining American-Israeli hostage would be released, who's still alive. A lot happening over the course of the weekend. When you look at all of that, David, what strikes you as most important? What should we be focusing on?
The first thing is, for an administration that talked about pulling back from the world, they're in pretty deep. And thank goodness. I'm one who believes that American leadership in the world matters in precisely moments like this, when you have a nuclear flare-up between India and Pakistan that could escalate into real catastrophe. Who's going to intervene to negotiate that? It turns out, in this case, as in the past, the United States. And from everything I can see, the White House, Secretary Rubio, did a pretty good job of calming things down. They were really getting to the flashpoint. We see
normal service resumed.
Between India and Pakistan.
Between the U.S. in terms of its role as global mediator.
So here's what I'd say as I look at this amazing agenda of negotiations that are going on. First, I see the ambition that Donald Trump has to be a peacemaker. We like to joke about how he wants to win the Nobel Prize, and if he doesn't win it in Ukraine, well, he's going to go over to Iran. But there is something to that. He has this big ambition that the United States will play a decisive role. And second, we see the extraordinary chaos of his efforts, because this really is kind of a one-man show. He's got different envoys. On Ukraine, for example, his envoy to Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg, and his envoy to Russia, Steve Witkoff, were saying basically different things.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's pretty crazy.
Trump had tweeted basically agreement with Vladimir Putin's insistence that the meetings be held in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, so he claims like Trump has been pushing the narrative and spewing this rhetoric for who knows how long now, that his base eats up like goodies, like it's nothing, that he is the anti-war guy. He's the anti-war candidate. He's an anti-war president. Meanwhile, I mean, putting aside the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, we have been engaged in what's literally a hot war between the U.S. and the Houthis in the Red Sea. We've lost hundreds of millions of dollars in drones and equipment so far in our skirmishes against the Houthis, our strikes against them. And turns out we're killing civilians over there as well. So much for anti-war. And not to mention, You got. I mean, India and Pakistan has always been like this a flashpoint in the world. That they've always hated each other. They've always gone back and forth. It's not the first time they've directly struck each other. But it goes to show that even though Trump's in charge, like he understands, and the U.S. Understands, the people around him understand that like there cannot be any flare-ups here because of just how quickly it could devolve. And according to them, there was a ceasefire that was put in place, but I guess it was immediately broken because Pakistan made like 26 different strikes on Indian military installations, something along those lines. And not to mention, we're still allowing Israel to just completely flatten Gaza.
Yeah.
So it's it's just
Harassment.
ridiculous. Yeah, we'll go ahead and continue.
Arabia without a prior ceasefire. Kellogg was still saying would have been the U.S.-European line. Got to have a ceasefire first. But in sum, I would say to viewers of this program, the efforts that Trump is making generally are positive. We'll see this week whether the Ukraine negotiations can actually move forward, as Trump said in his tweet yesterday. We'll see better when they meet on Thursday if Russia's serious. And if it isn't, then we'll take appropriate steps. So, finally, we should say something about China. That's the biggest trading relationship in the world. It looked like it was going right in the trash bin. And the agreement that was announced by our Treasury Secretary that cut tariffs back to 10%. One measure is that at last I looked this morning, the S&P 500 futures were up about 3%. That's a big gain. And that says from the financial markets, phew. We're glad that this is not heading to further catastrophe.
The markets have always sort of anticipated that eventually Trump would blink, this trade war would go to the side. We're probably going to see a big day on Wall Street, but we'll set that aside for the moment. Richard, as David just went through a lot on the foreign policy docket. But let's focus for a moment on the Middle East. The president leaves later today for Saudi Arabia. He's got 2 other stops in the Gulf while there. As I wrote about, you're previewing the trip. Certainly there are geopolitical concerns. We saw Hamas release that hostage, as just noted. There's still no progress there on a ceasefire, at least not yet, which is why Trump is not stopping Israel while there. The business deals are going to be his primary focus while over there. What should we be looking out for this first planned consequential trip of the Trump term?
Well, in some ways, Jonathan, it symbolizes Donald Trump's approach to foreign policy. It's almost how I put it. The business of American foreign policy is business. It's not geopolitics. It's not, quite honestly, peacemaking. And all that. It is business. And what we're going to be looking for are investment deals and so forth coming out of Saudi Arabia, coming out of the United Arab Emirates. I expect we'll talk about the airplane coming out of Qatar and so forth. I think that's the big thing. That said, he can't avoid diplomacy. It's interesting. He has proposed against Israeli preferences that the United States and Iran reach a negotiated agreement on Iran's nuclear program. Well, guess who supports that? All the countries he's going to. Why? If there's a military confrontation with Iran, Iranian retaliation would first and foremost probably come against them. So my hunch is he will get some support for what he wants for. What he's not going to get is Saudi forthcomingness to normalize relations with Israel.
This is what's
Palestinian issue.
This is what's really interesting about this whole thing, because everybody's like, what in the fuck is going on right now? He's not only trying to like renegotiate this nuclear agreement that he ended his first term with Iran, but you're getting this gigantic bribe from Qatar. You're obviously you've had this ongoing relationship with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emiratis. They're like, this is all like against the continued. This flies in the face of the continued support of Israel, because like these other countries in the region, they're not very fond of Israel, let alone what they're fucking doing in Gaza. So is there a reshaping going on in terms of geopolitical alliances, or at the very least alignments in the Middle East right now? And it's all up in the air right now. Like what exactly is what is going on behind the scenes? What kind of deals are being made? What is the future of the region? Why are we saying that Palestine's going to be the next that the U.S. believes
protectorate?
Palestine's going to be their
It'd
own
probably
state.
be like a protectorate, like Puerto
Something like
Rico.
that. Maybe, yeah. If not part of the U.S., then like their own independent state, something like that. But there were talks.
They should make it like Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo is a principality. They should make Palestine like a principality,
at the very
like
least,
completely separate from Israel.
Because before,
give them a port. They need a port, and then they're good. As soon as they're connected to the global economy, they're good.
When there was that the last ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, there was talks going on between the various countries in the region about what to do about Gaza. And during that ceasefire, it was signaled in the talks, the reports that came out, that the countries in the region would have a larger role in being like a some sort of multinational security force, and helping to rebuild Gaza and like basically make it its own Palestine, its own de facto state. Of course, like nothing really even ultimately came out of that, but I mean, the whole issue still isn't over. I mean, the ceasefire ended and Israel got back to doing what they're doing. But maybe what we're seeing right now is it maybe it has to do with those kind of those plans. Who knows? Like a lot of stuff is up in the air right now, like I said.
What Israelis have done in Gaza. There was initially some understanding in the Arab world about what they were doing in Hamas, but now that you've had, 50,000 Palestinians killed in Gaza, simply the politics, even for an authoritarian country like Saudi Arabia, do not allow them to normalize relations with Israel. So there'll be some geopolitics, some diplomacy, but you're basically 100% right. The focus here will be on business deals, and again, totally in keeping with Donald Trump's approach to the world.
Well, David Ignatius, let's take a step back and look. You
yeah, please. Our economy is crumbling. Please help us out.
From China to Iran, just go down the list. And I will say on tariffs, I mean, I got reporting this weekend that Donald Trump is still all in on tariffs, but this is part of the negotiation process. This is what he expected to happen, and he's Japan, South Korea going to be a little tougher, but. They firmly believe, the Trump White House firmly believes, because Donald Trump firmly believes, that if you take a tough position, the other side will eventually come to you. And they believe that's exactly what's happening right now.
No, it's not. No, it's fucking not. No, that's not. No, Joe, you're wrong. Suddenly you're wrong. What happened was, we backtracked. Donald Trump was like, okay, let's. I wouldn't be surprised behind the scenes, because I actually still need to look into the reporting of all this, that Trump has been behind the scenes begging to get like talks done, because he's seeing the empty ports. He's having countless companies come to him, or at least try to get their message to him, like, hey, this is destroying us. This is going we are going into a deep recession if this isn't reversed course immediately. And it's not to say that China hasn't been hurting from this, but they're the ones getting all the goddamn trade deals done. We haven't gotten a single goddamn one done since Liberation Day, except with the UK, I guess, which was I still don't know the details of that.
Suddenly you get it down to 80% and people are celebrating, the market's a relief. You get it down to 10, 20, 30%. Suddenly it's a victory, and your tariff levels are still 10% higher than when everybody started, but the markets absorb it, and actually you gain praise for it.
So, Joe, we'll see how this settles out. For me, what I've been watching is Donald Trump having a series of reality checks. He had a vision of a fundamentally different international trading system, and he's been forced, I think, to back away from that. So we're going to have a trading system that resembles pretty much what we've known. There'll be some higher tariffs, but the idea that we would decouple from China, which some people talked about for a while in the early phases of this,
ridiculous,
just proved too dangerous to Trump.
Yes.
The reaction from the financial markets was a strong no. Thou shalt not.
We're in bed, dude.
The financial markets really get
we're in bed with China, and we're too tied. That's why the whole idea of China trying to do something malicious to us never really lands with me, because our future is their future in a lot of economic ways.
Yeah,
they want to usurp us, and in many ways they have, but they don't want to they know the realities of a post-nuclear war or world, and they don't want to mess with that.
Yeah.
They want to have their borders nice and contained. It's like the Great Wall of China, right? It's perfect. It's a perfect metaphor for what they want. They want to have their corner of the world, and they own it. The only interest China really has in terms of imperialism is the neighboring islands. That's what they want control over, so that they can control all the trade routes.
Exactly.
This reality check phenomenon has been evident in his dealings with China, in his dealings with Ukraine and Europe. Realizing that Europe has power, Europe can push back. But I do think that we're seeing a learning administration that started off, I think, completely chaotic. And in some ways, the best use of power, most precisely and urgently, was the negotiations with India and Pakistan. That was really dangerous. And they got involved in the right moment, and they seemed to ratchet it back before it got even more dangerous. And this could lead to nuclear war. And you need an American president, American White House, that gets involved. And they did that pretty well.
as Richard mentioned on another topic, the Trump administration is preparing to accept a super luxury Boeing jumbo jet from the royal family of Qatar as a gift to be used as the new Air Force One. 4 sources familiar with the planning tell NBC News. According to one of the sources, the arrangement will be done according to US and international laws in observance of ethics rules. Ownership of the plane will then be transferred to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation once his second term ends, 2 of the sources confirmed. Trump confirmed the gift on social media yesterday while criticizing Democratic lawmakers who say it's another example of him using the presidency to enrich himself. So, Richard, first of all, how unusual would this be? How much of a potential conflict of interest is there? And the reporting that this goes to the presidential library, would that then mean actually
what?
Donald Trump
What is
fly as much as he wanted?
What is it, Trump? Was Epstein's jet being used as Air Force One just not good enough for you, or what?
So it's a good example of British understatement, Kathy, and I want to thank you for it. It is beyond unusual. Look, this would be a massive gift. This is from Qatar to the United States. In the short run, there's questions of security.
Essentially like a $500 million gift.
Coming from another country and all the considerations that go into this is not, shall we say, simply a normal airplane.
There's no way the Air Force is actually going to allow this.
And what it's able to carry out from when it's up in the air. And then, yes, it would be transferred in several years to the Presidential Foundation, which would then this would become an aircraft there for the personal use for then the former president of the United States. And the idea that it's not inconsistent with U.S. law, as the Attorney General and one of the lawyers seem to have said, because the quid pro quo is not explicit. That doesn't pass the seriousness test, because obviously this would mean that the government transferring the plane would get certain considerations, or we couldn't be sure that they didn't. So I could. It's hard to imagine that people.
Or if it's like if it's a jet built by them, it's like what if it's being monitored? Like I would have no doubt in my mind that our Secret Service or the Department of Defense would like strip that plane and rebuild it from the ground up to make sure that like no audio devices, no fucking explosives or weapons or any sort of fucking device is on that plane first before it's actually put into official use by the United States. It's just ridiculous in just so many different aspects.
With this. And just as an aside, 10 seconds, we began the show with talking about Newark. Well, what is wrong with Boeing? The idea that this is even on the agenda, that you have a company, one of the major companies in the United States that can produce a functioning Air Force One on time and remotely in the zip code of the budget. The fact that this is even contemplated seems to me something seriously wrong.
Yeah, I mean, certainly no doubt that's delays with the new Air Force One, frustrating to a lot of presidents of either party. But yeah, Joe, I mean, to Richard's point here a moment ago about this uncertainty, even if there's no explicit quid pro quo, the fact that we even have to ask those questions in the years to come are exactly why this sort of thing has always been prohibited. So therefore, President, there wouldn't be concern about undue influence and the like. And I know we play the game a lot of like, what would it be like under another administration? But we just spent 4 years hearing about the quote Biden crime family and Hunter Biden allegedly in efforts to enrich themselves. And now we have this aircraft being gifted to the president for his personal use, both before and after his time in office. I mean, I suspect we're going to hear a lot from Democrats in the days ahead about this. That anyway appears untoward.
So, and David Ignatius, I just want to go to you on another issue that Richard brought up, which was actually the first thing that came to mind to me. Obviously, there are going to be the ethical concerns that Congress is going to talk about. But well, first of all, an American company not being able to deliver Air Force One in a way that is on time and that meets the specs in a way that the presidents want them to. But number two, I'm just curious about the security concerns. Again, letting another country build Air Force One for our American president to fly around on. I would think that would make most people in the national security community deeply unsettled.
Yeah, like having a stomach ache or wanting to throw up. I mean, they're charged with making sure that this space in which the president and his closest advisors discuss the most sensitive issues of policy is secure. How you would do that with a plane provided entirely by another country, where surveillance devices, systems, new technologies we may not even be aware of.
He gets it. That's yeah. Fuck it. Like, wow. Like, I can't believe I'm not I just came up with that off the top of my head. It's just like, are we not considering like the possibility that this might be
everyone's thinking that. Yeah, everyone's thinking this. Like, this is about security. I don't understand how you're going to use a luxury jet as Air Force One in a post 9/11 world. Like, are you serious?
Oh my!
Like, Air Force One needs to have like weapons on it and shit.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It
like defense, like shaps and flares, like in case it gets fired on by a fucking F-18.
Bingo. Contingency
or a MiG, whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt at all. Like the plane that used to be Jeffrey Epstein's, which is now Air Force One, was not fitted with that kind of technology, with that kind of those kinds of defense mechanisms and shit. So it's like, yeah, like I'm glad I'm not the only one fucking like actually like considering
No,
the
everyone's thinking
implications
this.
of this.
That's the first thing that came to my mind was security.
Yeah,
How are you going to do this with security?
yeah.
Yeah, and I think
setting
the things that
aside
we're trying to talk about, like flares and chaffs, those are called countermeasures, I believe.
Yeah, contingencies, and the same thing with
No. Just countermeasures. They're like the same thing in like submarine warfare,
sure.
where you fire off. Where they fire anyway. Here we
Well,
go.
his
Dumb thing.
the presidential motorcade, the limo, the car that he actually that the president sits in. It's
Right.
it's a
It's like a
fucking
tank.
yeah. It's literally like a tank. It's got
Mhm.
it's got all
Yeah, it
sorts
can
of
survive
things,
a Stinger missile. It can survive like a huge like impact from
or a
you know,
chemical
a
attack, or
grenade or something like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly. And just to set aside like security measures and the implications and whatnot, it's $400 million. It's a very expensive fucking piece of technology,
Yeah.
a
It's a huge
vehicle.
gift.
It's a bribe. Like
Yeah.
we're already in bed with Qatar in a multitude of different ways. I wouldn't be surprised at all, especially in terms of um having them invest over here, perhaps crypto as well, but especially oil and oil and gas. So like the bribery aspect is another just huge thing. It's just like it's one of the most corrupt, like openly corrupt things that happened during the presidency, and it's just like we're just gonna let it happen. Like what's going on here?
Darn thing apart and put it back together before you really felt secure about it. So, that's a whole other category of problems. I just think back to, recent years. If an American official traveled abroad and was given a ceremonial sword or, a leather-bound notebook, he'd have to declare it and give it to somebody at the State Department and probably never see it again. And here's a president who's going to take a 747 from another country. Are you kidding me? It's just, it's so completely different from anything we've ever seen. So the security problems are significant, but oh my gosh, how could this be happening? That's really what gets me.
Yeah, Mark Polling was telling me about how he got given a $200 watch and he had to return it. This is a little different scale. So it's a plane that may come with added benefits for the Qataris as well. David Ignatius, thank you very much for coming in this morning. MSNBC contributor Pablo Torre joins us with a look at the NBA playoffs and an update on Bill Belichick's girlfriend and her access to the UNC.
Wait, thank you very much. All right. Foreign policy for today.
Yeah, I just got a
Promoting channel.
notification from Bella the Ranch. She actually just uploaded a video right now saying, "Let's talk about Trump's Air Force One problem." So yeah, it's a pretty big fucking deal right now.
Yeah, this just so people know, the Morning Joe today was flooded with sports, and sports I'm not particularly interested in.
Oh yeah.
There was an interview with a I don't know if you want to see it. It was with the Connecticut guy Murphy.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris Murphy. Do you want to see that?
Sure. Why not?
All right. Yeah,
He's making the rounds. He's making a good name for himself.
Yeah.
To him are people in his orbit. They would talk about a series of peace deals that they believe they could achieve the first 3 to 6 months of the administration. And the first one that they kept going to, which they thought was
Trump and Netanyahu.
Sorry.
country.
No, you're good.
A
Here we
political
go.
détente, if you like, around Iran, as opposed to just business, which is what the president has said he's going there for. Can we get some politics out of this too?
Well, let's be clear about what this trip is all about. This is President Trump's corruption tour of the Middle East. He is going to the Gulf in order to collect tribute.
Chris.
What's happening here is an extraordinary level of corruption. We shouldn't pretend this is business as usual. What the president is doing is giving countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE what they want. For Saudi Arabia, it's a civilian nuclear deal with the United States. For the UAE, it is taking some of the restrictions off of the way that semiconductors flow into that country. And in exchange, Trump is not asking for any benefit to the American people. He's not asking for any movement towards peace in the region. He's asking for cash. He's asking for cash payments. UAE is giving him that through this deal on cryptocurrency, in which they are doing a big deal through Trump crypto. And of course, we just found out this weekend that Qatar is going to be giving Donald Trump a plane, apparently personally. So that's the story of this trip. On Iran, obviously, I want a diplomatic agreement with Iran.
How much money is
what
enough?
Tragedy it would be if the result of these negotiations is to move Iran from where it is today, a handful of weeks away from a nuclear weapon if it wanted one, to a year, which is what the stated objective is. That was the deal that President Obama had negotiated, that Donald Trump walked away from. We wouldn't have to be at the negotiating table today
today talking about extending the time frame for an Iranian nuclear weapon out to a year if Donald Trump hadn't thrown that agreement in the trash. So it's just a sign of both the corruption and the incompetence of this administration's foreign policy.
Senator, the situation in Gaza is grim and getting grimmer every day for the people
Let's see
who
where he
live there.
stands on
The
this.
chances of any kind of deal over Gaza seem to have just disappeared.
Are
from,
you afraid of AIPAC?
Not just the headlines, but serious negotiations as well at the moment. It doesn't look like we're going to get the last remaining Israeli-American being held hostage out. Do you feel that this administration has now just washed its hands of the Gaza situation, having produced, we saw that extraordinary video of Gaza being the kind of Trump Riviera of the Middle East?
Well, there was an extraordinary moment right at the transition where you had both the outgoing Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration working to produce a ceasefire and a deal to release hostages. But then since then, Donald Trump has done nothing meaningful to put pressure on the Israeli government, or nothing really meaningful to put pressure on Hamas in order to bring not only a permanent ceasefire, but a move towards a political settlement. What Bibi Netanyahu is contemplating doing right now is re-entering this war, ultimately for the purpose of essentially eradicating from big parts of Gaza the Palestinian people. That will guarantee a long-term insurgency. That will hurt the long-term security of Israel and likely the United States as well.
Yeah, they want to permanently occupy it.
Contemplating taking, essentially restarting the war. It has real consequences for the United States. So it's a moment where this trip should include some real diplomacy on Gaza. But because Trump is only focusing on padding his own pockets, he's not going to Israel. He's only going to the countries that are willing to pay him off.
We have not okay. There's been over 2 months now, over 2 months, where aid of any kind
hasn't been allowed in.
Hasn't been allowed into Gaza. There are people
No, it's hell on earth, man. It's hell on earth.
It's the worst it's ever been.
It's like what was that one, Stalingrad back in World War II? They're all starving, like the Russians, the Soviets, and Ukrainians in World War II. It's just we're back. Like it's just we're not the cameras aren't getting in there so we can see it. I'm sure you can find stuff if you really want to, but so it's like
barbaric.
It's a testament to how powerful Zionism and elite Zionists are in the United States.
Yeah,
that's what it's a testament to. I remember when there was protests going on at UPenn, some big donor who was a Zionist threatened to give away his annual gift or something like that, and he usually gave him like a couple of $1 million every year or something.
Yeah,
and he was a billionaire, and then I don't know, I can't remember whether or not they caved, but I mean, it's ridiculous, the entitlement that Zionists have over cultural influence.
Yeah, without a doubt.
That news as well. Democratic member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Over the weekend, Russian President Vladimir Putin proposed a new round of direct talks with Ukraine this week in Turkey, quote, without
coming.
This fucking guy.
All right, here we go. Yeah, this fucking guy
piece of shit.
From Geneva, Switzerland, Treasury Secretary Scott Johnson. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for being with us. You have been optimistic from the beginning. You have been reassuring Wall Street, reassuring business owners and entrepreneurs.
Toxically optimistic.
These deals are going to be coming.
Dishonest.
Ridiculed for being overly optimistic, but we had the U.S.-UK deal on Friday, followed by a British Airways deal with Boeing. And now some progress on China, which you had even said going into these talks were going to be far more difficult and not to expect any quick breakthroughs. And yet it looks like we have one. Tell us about the negotiations and where the deal stands right now.
Good morning, Joe. And what we have is a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs. Both sides de-escalated by 115%. So we are both at 10 on the reciprocal tariffs. The fentanyl-related tariffs, which President Trump put on in February, are still on. And over the next 90 days, we have a mechanism to meet with the Chinese trade delegation. Again, we will be discussing tariffs, non-tariff trade barriers, currency, and their subsidies of labor and capital, and how we can open up China to American businesses and rebalance what is our most imbalanced, unbalanced trading relationship.
Now,
what do you do? What are you fucking talking about? Like American companies,
we buy a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, American companies have been intertwined with China for decades now. There's cheap labor there, therefore cheap products. American companies rely on the cheap labor and the cheap products
and you know, they buy a ton of soybeans and stuff from us. Like there's back and forth relationship with China.
It's like, what do you mean getting American companies back involved with China? It's like your fucking administration is the one that fucking put a stop to all that shit.
Yes,
the tariffs were increased to such a gigantic amount to where you could it was impossible to even continue trade with them anymore. Like they just became redundant. Like after the Trump administration put up to 145, it's just like there's no point. Like after that point, like China even said, I mean, there's not even a point to respond anymore because it just becomes redundant. Well, let's put
This
put
is my
jillion
kind
percent.
This is my kind of conservative, though. The robot conservative with the stick up his ass so far that he can't actually look right at the camera. He has to try to look down ever so subtly. He's not even aware he's doing it, but he's trying to look down, and he thinks he's better than you. This is definitely a wasp.
Last year's, even for those business leaders,
Robot
economists who opposed tariffs, there was always sort of a caveat. And they go, yeah, we're against tariffs. That said, China really is taking advantage of the United States. I heard that from even the most fierce free traders. I'm wondering, with that in mind, what are your biggest challenges ahead? What is the administration's greatest challenges ahead in negotiating to make sure this goes where you want it to go, where the president wants it to go over the next 90 days?
Well, Joe, this is going to go where the president wants it to go. I was in touch with him over the weekend, and he wants free trade, free and fair trade. We've had free trade, and as you said, that has not worked for the American people. There's something called the China shock, which has gutted our manufacturing sector. And China has a different form of government for us. They have a different economic model where they subsidize labor, they subsidize capital goods, and they have
we should do that
to us and the rest of the world. We have put up tariffs to push back on that. So it will be a matter of what is the equilibrium level on tariffs, and also getting China to open their markets for American companies. Because China actually has a low tariff regime, but it is the non-tariff trade barriers that can be the most difficult to overcome. So we will be focusing on the non-tariff trade barriers and the subsidies.
I don't know if you saw the video that the Humanist Report did that of all the Chinese influencers and whatnot talking about like how they have no American goods at all. And basically like shitting on like all the conservatives that think they know everything about Chinese trade and the Chinese people and whatnot, and these Chinese, like, I guess they're TikTokers, influencers, just shitting on them, like the fact that like America gets so much from China in terms of material goods and whatnot. Whereas China, like the Chinese people, they don't fucking have any American shit, and they don't need American shit because like we don't produce the shit that they need. They get everything they need from China, from their own goddamn country. It's just like they're a producer nation, we're a consumer nation. That's how it's been for decades now, and that's not going to change anytime soon. No matter how many fucking tariffs you put on them to disrupt the whole goddamn process.
No, the establishment's too strong. The supply chain is too strong.
Yeah.
China can become more open to American business, and the things that are sold into the U.S. Can not have the same level of subsidy. And no one wants to do a generalized decoupling, but we are going to do a strategic decoupling because we realized during COVID that
this was so strategic, dude.
So with steel, with semiconductors, with medicines, with a couple of other strategic categories, we are going to have to become self-reliant again.
So
why didn't you do that?
How the drop of oil below $60 a barrel.
This whole thing was generalized.
I've read
from the
reports,
beginning.
and I'm curious your thoughts. I keep reading reports about how China is negotiating from a position of strength, and yet everything I've read over the past 5 years, everything we've reported on over the past 5 years is China's economy is struggling as well. There have been a series of self-inflicted injuries from Xi to the Chinese economy. I'm wondering that when you say to those who'd say it's foolish to push China because they're negotiating from a position of strength when actually their economic numbers over the past 5 years would suggest they need a deal as much as anybody.
Well, Joe, what they are doing is during COVID, they moved up the value chain in terms of their manufacturing sector, and they actually became more unbalanced. So what we want China to do is to rebalance toward more consumption. Party Chairman Xi has talked about that, but they haven't done it yet. Simultaneously, President Trump is rebalancing the U.S. economy toward more manufacturing. So, Joe, their economy, it is hurting, but the remedy for that is not to export their deflation or their
it only appears like they're hurting
domestic demand, and we could conceivably, away from strategic materials, do this together. We need more manufacturing, they need more consumption. There is a chance to rebalance together.
This is the thing. It only appears like they're struggling because their economy is not wired like the U.S. is. They are not a consumption economy. They don't need to be a consumerist economy because they're not a fucking capitalist economy. They're a centralized plan, fucking communist capitalist economy. They don't need to have such a large consumer base because they're not America. America is a fucking gigantic, there's no comparison to be made. So if your goal, if your intent is to shift the entire fucking culture and economy of a billion fucking people just so it suits the financial and economical wishes of American companies or the American government at large in terms of trade and shit. It's just not gonna fucking happen. It's ridiculous. Such wishful
together,
thinking.
so we'll see if that's possible.
Mr. Treasury Secretary, good to see you. Want to take, if you would take us inside these negotiations a bit. It was just Friday. President Trump tweeted 80% tariff on China seems right, up to Scott B. Of course, meaning you, as you went into those negotiations, you ended up at a number quite a bit lower than that. Talk to us about the tenor of these talks and how you reached the number where you ended up.
Well, the tenor of the talks is very, very much similar to the relationship at the top of the two countries. President Trump has great respect for Party Chair Xi, and it is vice versa. They have spoken often, and in fact, President Trump reached a fantastic trade deal in January 2020 under Party Chair Xi's leadership. That was discarded by the Biden administration, and we are trying to get back to that. The vice premier, who was my Chinese counterpart, came. The talks were firm and highly they engaged. Our teams spent a lot of time together, and what I would say was very similar to, I think, for the first time, the Chinese understand the importance that President Trump puts on curing this fentanyl crisis in the U.S. and the role that China may be playing on that with precursor chemicals.
Useful idiots.
A vice minister for state security who specializes in, I think, narcotics, and he met with a member of our national security staff off to the side. So this was, while my team and I were focused on economics, there was a separate meeting on fentanyl, and
so
I think
this
is the
guy
first
is like,
time we are seeing progress on these precursor drugs that are coming into North America.
So this whole time, I mean,
Scott Bessent, thank you so much for being with
in
us.
this position of authority, it's just been nothing but damage control. So he has to like carefully construe and concoct a narrative, dance around words and whatnot, and it's just like he's just not comfortable. There's no
this guy Bessent used to work for Soros.
No fucking shit. No kidding. That's hella funny.
He got his start. He was a hedge fund manager. He got to start as Soros, and then founded his own group, and then obviously made a killing.
That is so ironic.
Openly gay.
He's gay?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. like
highest ranking openly LGBT person ever to serve in the federal government of the United States. This guy is.
He's in over his head.
Piece of shit, dude.
He's a piece of garbage. And why is he here? Like what?
Yale guy.
Well, of course that checks out. That really checks out. Like I'm just shocked at how he made it into this like administration, let alone like has such a high ranking position and is on TV so often, because like
he's awful on camera.
He is.
He's awful.
He's awful. Like people's primary concern right now is the economy, and it hinges on these fucking trade deals. And like a lot of people are saying we're going into recession, so of course this guy has to be out there in that uncomfortable position of quelling fears and trying to, concoct this narrative like
concerns.
Alleviate concerns
in business, and that's what they call it in business rhetoric or the corporate vernacular is alleviating concerns. That's what it's all about.
Bella the Ranch said this in a recent video, and I don't know if she got this from someone else, but it was a great quote. It was, when people's first concern, when their primary concern right now is the economy, they can't afford to be distracted by cultural war bullshit. So like while all this fucking economic downturn is going on, with all this chaos with tariffs and trade and ports dropping traffic and shelves beginning to go empty, everything going up in price, you can't as the Trump administration distracting people with cultural war issues, like fucking changing designating new holidays or pointing to some sort of outrage of the day. People aren't going to be as concerned with that when their economic futures are in jeopardy.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's the right-wing magic trick. Check it out. It's my third episode. The distraction tactics of the culture war. to advance an agenda that serves capital.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. It's not complicated once you see it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're kidding.
And you see it left and right if you just pay attention. So that's going to be it for me today.
Yeah, it's fine.
But that was a good little episode. We'll try to do these as frequently as we can, guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate you tuning in. You're welcome to stay on your stream if you want. Are you going to stay alive or are you going to call it a day?
No, I should tidy up my room, and I got a phone interview with a potential job in an hour, so I can do that, and then I'm actually head to the gym before my shift tonight, so I'll try to do that. I might be free around the same time on Wednesday as well if we wanted to do another morning bro.
Okay.
Since my evenings for the next few days are going to be occupied.
Right. All right. Until then, we are reminding you that you don't get change in America by asking nicely. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Have a good day, guys.
And we are out.